Now this takes us to Fiji. Now I had a chance to visit Fiji for the first time in March. I went there before the coup. I went there because I went on my own, didn't organize a tour, by myself, nothing was planned, got a hotel at the last minute because I was told that these black people in the Pacific said they came from Africa. And they said it with great pride. Now, very few people that I know outside of Africa are willing to claim African ancestry. I heard that these brothers and sisters did. Naturally, I wanted to go there. And this brother blowing the conch shell represents my arrival in Fiji. Fiji is deep in the South Pacific, and Fiji is a series of about 300 islands, of which the largest is called Viti Levu. Let me show you some of the people I met in Viti Levu next. That's a nice slide, isn't it? Beautiful sister. In fact, the sisters are not only beautiful, but extremely friendly. And they all seem to like me, just why I don't know. But I certainly liked them, and I asked them a lot of questions. I would pester them with everything you could think of. And I would say, for example, do you meet African Americans very often? They say, all the time. They said, but we've never met any like you before. And I said, now what do you mean by that? Because you ask so many questions. And I said, does that bother you? They said, no, we love it. We like the idea that you are interested in us. So I started asking them some more questions. For example, I would ask, who is the African American that you are most familiar with? They said, Muhammad Ali. And after that, Martin Luther King. And after that, Michael Jordan. I'm sorry to say that they didn't know much about Malcolm. I said, do you know Malcolm X? You mean the man in the Spike Lee movie? I said, kind of, something like that. And then they didn't know much about Marcus Garvey. And I asked them, I said, what makes a woman beautiful here? Of all the features that the black women have, what is it that makes a woman, what characterizes her beauty? They said it's her hair. And they have these big, beautiful, natural hairstyles, like Alton said he used to have. Like I used to have, if you can use your imagination. I used to have a big one too. Next. I didn't know y'all were going to laugh about that. Next. And virtually all the sisters look like that. I didn't hardly see any black women. It was refreshing, and I don't mean any disrespect, with chemicals in their hair. You said that. Next slide. But the brothers were very friendly too. And the brothers were known as ferocious warriors. They were never defeated in battle. And all of them I talked to, from the brother on the corner to the college professor, they all say they came from Africa, and they said it with great pride. First day I got there, in fact, let me point out that in Fiji you have two populations. You have the indigenous population, and then you have East Indians. The East Indians are people we're going to have to reckon with. They're all over the world. You find them in Guyana, in Trinidad, in Suriname, in Kenya, in Tanzania, in South Africa, Uganda, right here, in Fiji. And almost everywhere there's an adversarial relationship. Okay? Now, in Fiji, they were taken there by the British about 1840 to work the sugarcane plantations, and now they own virtually the whole retail economy. I naturally love to patronize African people. So I got there, there were 18 taxis outside the hotel, 18. And of the 18, one of them was run by a brother. One. And naturally, that's the one I got in. And the moment I jumped in the taxi, we hit it off. He says, by the way, my name is Pharaoh. And I said, Pharaoh, where do you come from? He said, well, my grandfather said we came from South Africa. Others would tell me they came from Egypt. And others told me they came from Tanganyika, or mainland Tanzania. And they were serious warriors. They say they can not only tell you they came from Africa with pride, they tell you when they came, how they came. They said not only are we from Africa, all the people of the Pacific come from Africa. Now, brothers and sisters, that knocked me out. Because I'm something of an egghead. I read all the time. Before I go to any place, I always study the area. But I never read that in a book. And so it really reinforced to me the belief that most of our history has not been written. And as a result of that, these are very exciting times that we are living in, because we are reclaiming our identity. We're rewriting our history. There's the African proverb that until the lion has his historian, then the hunter will always be a hero. And now you can see we are clearly writing our own histories. I think that from time to time you have cycles. In the 1920s, you had what is sometimes called the Harlem Renaissance, led by the Garvey movement. And then in the 50s and 60s, the struggle for democratic rights, so-called civil rights movement. I believe we're on the crest of another wave like that, another renaissance, and I really want to be a fundamental part of that. UAM is at the heart of that movement. Next slide. And you also have, among the Indians who came, you have black people who came over there too. Beautiful black women. I love African women. But the black people from India don't identify themselves with the black people from Fiji. And as a result of that, this coup took place. The Indians, in Fiji, black people control the army, the police, and they own most of the land. But the Indians have leased the land, and it was time to renew the leases, and the leases were next to nothing. And an Indian prime minister came to power because the black people couldn't hold it together. And then the prime minister demanded that the leases be renewed at the same rate, and they were overthrown as a result of that, led by a brother named George Spreight. Next. Now, the essence of life, the basis of life in Fiji is in the village. And this is a typical Fijian village. You don't see any black people who are homeless or hungry, because they can always go back to the village. And this is a typical village. I went into a lot of villages, and it was the heart of the trip for me. Next. This is the chief and some of the children of the first village that I had a chance to go to. And every time I would go in a village, unfortunately, I couldn't go by myself. There'd always be a handful of white people, because the tours would be organized in the hotels. And I didn't see but one brother from outside Fiji all the time I was there. And he didn't want to speak to me. With a white woman. And every time I walked past, I say, "Hey, brother." And he just hold his head down. He's ashamed, even in Fiji. You don't blame him either? All right. So I'm with these white folks. They don't like me. I don't like them. But I ain't over there for them. I want to go to the village. And I would go in the village with these Europeans, and the black people would see me, and they'd say, "Where are you from?" I said, "From the States, but my ancestors come from Africa." "Well, we come from Africa too." They said, "You come sit over here next to me." And we would sit and talk and drink kava and just ignore these white people all day. And I would love it. Next. You can see the children. This child has a heck of an expression on his face right here. I don't know what's on that kid's mind. Next. Serious look. Again, deep in the interior of Fiji or Viti Levu. Next. Well, I met this chief. Now, who does he look like? Dr. Clark. In fact, I told, once again, the same routine. He said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "The same place you're from." He said, "You come sit next to me." And he said, "Have you ever been to Africa?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Have you been?" He said, "No, but I really would like to go." And we would sit and talk. I said, "You know, you look just like one of my teachers. He's an ancestor now." He said, "Really?" I said, "His name was John Henry Clark." Now, I'm sure he didn't know who Dr. Clark was, but he seemed to be delighted by the idea. Next. So he said, "You come sit next to me." That looks like a red, black, and green flag back there, don't it? Next. And by the time the day was over, we had just got real tight. Okay? He said, "You ought to come live over here." He said, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm a historian." He said, "Come over here and teach." And I said, "Man, I gotta go." He said, "Well, go, but come back." Okay? You're a distinguished guest.